This episode goes out to our patron, Dakota Heath. Online, in Discord, and on Patreon. You're amazing, dude. Hi there, Garrett Robinson here. Welcome to the 21st episode of the Nightblade Epic Podcast, Season 3. Welcome to the first episode of 2021, listener. I'm sure I'm not the only one glad to see 2020 gone. Today, you have all my wishes for a better year than last year. Admittedly, that's a pretty low bar. Let's hope we clear it. One thing that wasn't awful about 2020 was you, and the way you continue to be here for this podcast. The family surrounding the show continued to grow all year. I have a favorite ritual of looking at the map of people downloading and listening to episodes all around the world. Every time I do, it warms my heart, whether I see people listening in places I care about a great deal, like New Zealand, places I want to visit, like Ireland, or places I never expected the show to find an audience, like Rwanda or Israel or Serbia. In all, tens of thousands of new people downloaded hundreds of thousands of episodes all around the world, and that is absolutely mind-boggling. So thank you, listener, for being here. Thank you to every one of you who shared the show with friends in your life. Today, have a beer or a coffee or just a glass of water and join me in a toast to an even better year for all of us. Okay, now it's time for today's episode. Today, you're getting Chapter 29 of Darkfire. When we left off, Lauren and her friends had fled from Tristan. After discovering that no matter how many times they killed him, he continued to rise again. Enjoy! Darkfire, Chapter 29. Jordell led them at a crouching run along the stronghold's wall, around the corner towards the gate that led in from the east. All of them kept a wary eye above, watchful for any guard who might poke their head over to see them, but they went unnoticed, for they clung closely to the wall. Lauren led the way after that, for she knew where the hidden entrance was, while Jordell pushed Zane on ahead of him. But the wizard caused no trouble at all, running along behind her obediently, halting whenever the rest of them did without complaint. They found the eastern gate closed, and so they crept by it without incident. Before long, they stood in front of the secret entrance that Jordell had shown Lauren before. While Albern kept a hand on Zane's arm, Jordell pressed his finger into the chink in the wall, and the stone gave way before them. Quietly, they crept inside, and Jordell pushed the door closed behind them. Then they were trapped in silence and darkness, within the very bowels of their enemy's stronghold, from where Lauren had no faintest idea how they might escape. Jordell bound Zane's feet again, which the wizard suffered without struggle. Then for a while they simply rested, nearly all of them nursing injuries from the fight. Lauren tried to feel on her back where Tristan had struck her, but her arms could not quite reach it, and trying to do so made her ribs flare with pain. She could hardly see the others, who were visible only by a hair-thin sliver of light that came in beneath the secret door to the outside world. "We shall need a light," said Jordell. "There should be a torch fixture on the wall. Here it is. They had a torch in the cells beyond, if you will recall, Lauren. Fetch it for us, will you?" "What if they notice its absence?" said Lauren. "I do not think they would guess that we took it into the walls," he said. "But be quick about it, so that you are not seen." Lauren went to the other end of the passageway, where she found the wooden wall that was, in fact, the back of the shelves in the dungeon room. She pushed it open on its silent hinges and ran to the torch. When she lit it and fixed it to the wall in the hidden passage, it seemed bright as the sun. "Much better," said Albern. He had unstrung his bow to lay it across his knees, and was now polishing his knife, which still bore some stains of blood from the fight. With the room lit, Lauren could see the children sitting against the opposite wall, Jem was poking with interest at the bruise that covered his face, but Annis sat huddled, arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes staring at nothing. Lauren sidled over to sit between them and placed an arm around the younger girl's shoulders. "Do not be so fearful, Annis. You look like a woman awaiting her execution." "Am I not?" said Annis. "Are not we all? We sit trapped in the fortress of our enemy, and their leader cannot be killed." Lauren had no good answer to that, for she too had been badly shaken by the sight of Tristan rising to life again after Albern killed him twice. "It must be some kind of magic," she said. "It is," said Jordell. "A dark magic that Underrealm has not seen in centuries. Not since a much, much darker time than ours. It is an evil portent indeed." He turned to where Zane sat against the wall. The wizard glanced at him with troubled eyes. Jordell gave him the slightest of nods. Lauren shot them both a dirty look. The last thing they needed was to rob Annis of what little hope she had left. "And yet we escaped from him." "That hardly helps," said Annis, "for still we are trapped." "And we shall escape from here too," said Lauren, "just as we escaped from Cabras, and Wellmont, and Vivian upon the river. Only after here there will be no more dangers, no more foes trying to harm us. In no time we shall be in Feldamar, well on our way to—" She turned to Jordell. "Where are we going exactly?" He must finally have understood that Lauren wished to cheer the girl, for he nodded slowly. "To my stronghold of Ammon, in the southeast of that kingdom," he said. "It was a castle of my family's, built in times past to guard Feldamar against invasion from Dolmoon, but it was long abandoned, for it was built in a time of war that has long since ended. Feldamar and Dolmoon have been at peace for many hundreds of years. When I joined the Order and learned of Ammon, I took it for my own, and from there I have long planned my efforts throughout the 9 lands. It is no place of luxury or even of much comfort, but it has 2 great strengths. It is secret, and it is safe." "But will the other mystics not know that you have gone there?" said Annis, her voice still filled with worry. "Will they not find us?" "Mayhap," said Jordell. "The High King herself knows of the stronghold and may send her agents there to find me. But I have allies there, and loyal soldiers who will spare no effort to help us and conceal us from any search. It has always seemed prudent to me to keep one place where I could retreat, where not even my masters could reach me if I did not wish it." "Do you see?" said Lauren. "Once we leave the Great Rocks, we shall lose ourselves in the Birchwood, my home. No one will find us there. And beyond the Birchwood, it is but a short journey to Feldamar." "A short journey, you say?" grumbled Annis. "I feel as though we move from one short journey to another, except they are always longer than we think and more fraught with peril." "You may be right, and yet I promise you this, Annis of the family Yeren," said Jordell. "I vow that I will see you safely to Ammon. While life remains in my body, I will not abandon you or turn aside. I will see you, and all of us, to safety." Annis peered at him in the torchlight. She did not say anything, but she nodded, and Lauren could feel her relax. "All very good words, and I do not doubt them," said Albern. "But it seems that before they can be carried out, the lot of us have much to do." "He is right," said Jem. "We cannot very well reach Ammon while we lurk in these castle walls." "No, we cannot," said Jordell with a sigh. "But we have learned much about the foes who wish to prevent our escape. One of them, the Yerens, known, and the other largely a mystery. It is the unknown that worries me, of course, and yet with each encounter I learn more and more of them. But at the same time, the family Yeren becomes more of a question." "How do you mean?" said Lauren. "Think. Why should Yeren seek the help of this lord, whoever he may be?" said Jordell. "If they desire his help, he must be more powerful than they, or at least capable of things they are not. But if that is true, how could he have hidden himself so well that I have never heard even whispers of his arrival?" "You would know better than us," said Jem. "And yet I know nothing. But I have guesses. And if I guess correctly, then we have already fought the first battle of a war I have tried to stave off for many years." He looked at Zane as he said that. The wizard sat with his hands bound behind him, very near the secret doorway through which they had come. His eyes were clear now, as they were most days, and in them Lauren saw a great worry. She remembered how, in Wellmont, Jordell had spoken to Zane for most of a day. He had desired the wizard's services ever since Lauren first met him in Cabras, and on that day Jordell had finally revealed why. But not to her. Jem stirred where he sat, reaching for the saddlebag he had brought. "I wish you would speak more plainly. All this double talk makes me quite hungry, yet I am certain you will insist I do not eat as much as I wish." "In that you are correct, for if you ate as much as you wish, no doubt your stomach would rupture," said Jordell, snatching the saddlebag away from him. "And it is wise to fear speaking plainly about that which you do not know plainly. Those who speak with both authority and ignorance may plant ideas that cannot be shaken off, even after seeing the truth." "More double talk," grumbled Jem. "Give me what food you will, and that will sate my curiosity." Jordell chuckled and divided their food, handing Jem some small morsels of bread and the last of an old cheese that was nearly spoiled. The rest received their rations in silence, all of them lost deep in thought. Lauren wondered if their minds were turned to the same thing as hers, the sight of Triskin struggling up from the floor, as his ruined eye stitched itself together. "Lauren, will you feed Zane for me?" said Jordell. She nodded and took the food Jordell held forth, then went to where Zane lay. Lauren noted with interest that the wizard looked better than he had in a while. His limbs were still thin and wasted, and his cheeks gaunt, but his eyes were clear and bright, and they no longer sank so deeply into his skull. He had lost much of his hair to the Magestone sickness, but what remained had thickened and grown lustrous again. He looked at her eagerly as she removed the gag. Carefully she untied it and pulled the cloth down from his mouth. The moment his lips were free, Zane said loudly, "Jordell, let me help." His voice, so strong in the cramped space, made Lauren jump in surprise. Jordell and Alburn reached for their knives on instinct, but Zane did not move at all, and spoke no further word. Jordell had warned her that a fire mage's words of power were dangerous, and that is why Zane had been kept gagged. The wizard must have recognized their fear, for he did not utter so much as a murmur as Jordell studied him silently. Annis, however, did not remain silent. "Indeed, let him help us," she muttered, looking down at her hands. "That has turned out so well in the past." Zane looked at her sadly, but then he returned his gaze to Jordell. His eyes were so eager, so earnest. Lauren wanted him to speak, to explain himself, but he waited. "Go on," said Jordell, his voice entirely passive. Lauren could read nothing in the words. "We must escape this stronghold," said Zane. "Yet there are only 6 of us and an army of our foes. But you know my strength. You know I can tip the scales in our favor. Let me do it, Jordell, and prove my remorse." "You ask us to trust you, Zane?" said Annis, trembling as she beheld him. "You would have done better if your first words were an apology, for your actions in the valley and for this." She drew down the collar of her dress, pressing a finger to her neck. There was the terrible scar Zane had left in her skin, the twisted, melted flesh where he had burned her with his fire. "I shall never be able to apologize enough for what I did to you, Annis, and to the rest of you as well," said Zane quickly. "No words will ever make it right, only action. Let me stand beside you and atone for my wrongdoings by aiding our escape, or give my life to enable it, if need be." "Then the debt of honor would certainly be paid," said Annis, turning away. "Annis," said Jordell in a warning tone. "Still your tongue," she said. "I am done. Trust him if you wish or not. I cannot sway you either way, and I will not presume to try." Jordell looked solemnly at her for a moment before turning back to Zane. The wizard sat still, looking up expectantly. "Though she is overzealous in her condemnation, Annis is not entirely wrong," said Jordell. "With such peril surrounding us, it seems an ill-advised time to test the limits of your honesty. Even so, I might do it. Yet if you are recovered, it is only recently, and still you are weak from the Magestone's hunger. We would gain precious little advantage by freeing you, and yet we would risk a great deal." "I feel strong," Zane insisted, voice rising. "I know I can help you, and I do not speak idly. If it comes to it, I shall stay behind to ensure your escape. It is the least that honor demands of me." Jordell frowned, and his hand stole beneath his cloak, where Lauren knew it gripped the hilt of his blade. "I've given you my answer, Zane." Zane's brow wrinkled, and Lauren grew afraid he would lash out with words of power, afraid of what his magic could do in such a small space. But as her gaze rested upon his face, she saw it relax. His eyes grew calm again. He shook his head sadly and turned away from them. "As you say," he muttered quietly. "I suppose I deserve no better." Lauren fed him and replaced the gag. She took no pleasure in it. As they sated their hunger, they sat around Jordell in a small semicircle. First, Lauren told them all that had happened within the stronghold, and all she had heard between Damaris and Triskin. But she did not say how much they had spoken of her, because that seemed somewhat akin to boasting. Jordell sat quiet, cross-legged with his hands across his knees, like some village elder telling children a story, as Lauren spoke and the others asked their questions. When they had finished, he spoke his thoughts at last. "Whatever their ultimate purpose here, I know one thing. This fortress must not be allowed to stand," said Jordell. "We must cast out both the Shades and the family Yeren, for no scheme of theirs will bring anything but evil to the Nine Lands." "I thought our intent was to escape," said Albern. "It seems you speak of a fight instead." "Tell me how you think we can escape without a fight, and I shall call it good counsel," said Jordell. "But they have guards with torches on the wall by night, and can see the road for Mayup a league in either direction by day. By vanquishing them, or at least by wreaking greater havoc upon the stronghold and thus distracting them, we stand our best chance at slipping away undetected." "But, Jordell, understand I am not afraid," said Jem carefully. "But we are only 6, 5 without the wizard, who we cannot rely upon. You have said there are scores of soldiers here. One does not need cowardice, only prudence, to see that the odds in such a battle are more than a little stacked in the favor of our enemies. Yet where so few may be weak in open battle, they may have great strength in silence and secrecy," said Jordell. "And I think I have a way to use our small number, and the fact that the Shades do not yet know where we are hiding, to attack the fortress." "Say on, then," said Jem. "I should love to hear how 5 fighters can conquer more than 50. Mayhap they will sing a song about it." "If they do, it may be because we failed in our secrecy," said Jordell. "But no matter. The family Yeren has placed their caravan in the stronghold's courtyard. They hold many goods, but we all know their true cargo is Magestones." Lauren glanced at Zane. His eyes had lit up with interest, and she felt a shiver climb her spine. "Magestones empower wizards, but they have other properties," said Jordell. "If a Magestone is set ablaze, it burns with dark fire." "Dark fire," whispered Lauren. "Like Zane used upon the Dorshan ships outside of Wellmont?" Jordell nodded. "And upon the road, when he struck down Vivian. Dark fire cannot be doused without magic, and I would be surprised if they have any wizards here within the castle walls. Water only spreads it, and it will burn through wood, cloth, flesh, and even steel." "You mean to set the caravan ablaze," said Albern. "A fine distraction, to be sure, so long as we do not let ourselves be caught in the fire here within our hiding place." "That would be ill-advised, to be sure," said Jordell with a small smile. "My thought is that Annis and Zane will hide here, within the walls. As soon as the flames are set, the rest of us will return to join them and escape as our enemies are occupied by the destruction of their stores." "It would be a grievous blow to the family Yeren, to be sure, to lose so valuable a cargo," said Lauren. "And if the Shades are already angry at them for their dealings with you, believing you to be a mystic spy, think of their wrath after this," said Jordell. "Such a blow could forever sunder this dark alliance, and that could do nothing but help us in the future." And best of all, in Lauren's mind, they would take no lives in the process. When Jordell had first begun to speak of attacking the fortress, she thought he meant to break his vow by asking her to slay the Shades. This plan, however, would do their enemies great harm without spilling a drop of blood. "You mean to leave me alone with the wizard again," said Annis. "The last time that happened, I did not enjoy the experience." "Yet then he was unbound," said Jordell. "And if you wish to leave this stronghold as badly as you claim, I think this gives us our greatest chance." "Very well, then," said Albern. "Tell us what you mean for us to do." This has been a production of Legacy Books, written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. Today's letter is L. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.